do it. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. We got a couple more trickling in here. My name is Jason VandenBerghe. I am a creative director at Ubisoft, working on a game called For Honor, and it's delightful to see you all here. Thank you for coming to my talk. They've asked me to clarify a couple of things. First, if you've got, squeakers or, anything that makes noise, if you're playing your 3DS, turn off the sound. Anything that makes noise, turn it off. We're going to send you surveys in email. It would be great if you would fill those out. It used to be that you could just hand them to me and I could fill them out for you. I can't do that anymore, so now I rely on your actual opinion of the talk. So do all that. And we'll have questions at the end. If you have questions for us, we have the mics here, etc. Okay, so let's get started. So this talk is engines of play towards a universal model of player motivation. Let's start out by talking a little bit about first why we're here. This is the third talk I've given on this topic. It's kind of a trilogy right now, so we'll see if it stops here. I'm hoping that it will, but maybe it won't. I don't know. Who knows? But why are we here? I'm going to give you a very, very brief recap of where we are. Before I do that, a quick show of hands. Who here has seen either one of my previous two talks on the domains of play? Oh, good. Okay, a few have. For those of you who haven't, I'm going to do a very quick recap of some of the concepts, just enough that you won't be lost for this stuff a little bit later, but we won't spend too much time on that. There's two talks in the vault. I recommend them. You can go and check them out. Okay. Actually, second question for you. Was there anyone here who was in Nick Yee's talk this afternoon where he talked about data and all of that stuff? Right. Okay, so Nick just destroyed my entire presentation. For those of you who don't know, Nick runs a place called Quantic Foundry. Did a big dump on new data for player modeling. I highly, highly recommend that you check out his talk. It's a 30-minute talk, and his data. He's talking a lot about what we're doing here, and I'm probably just going to switch to his model once I leave the building here. Okay, so thanks, Nick, for screwing up my talk. So why are we here? What are we doing here? I like to tell the story a couple years ago when I was first starting to think about this. I was walking down, I was going to give a talk at GDC. This was in 2011. And Dan Hay, who's the executive producer on Far Cry, runs in. I don't know if you've seen Dan, but Dan's a very, very, very big man. I run into Dan and I say, hey, Dan, I'm giving a talk at GDC. I'm going to talk about player psychology and motivation. And Dan says, well, what's it good for? So I said, well, this piece for, So I had to come up with an answer for that one, because that's a great question, right? Producers want to know, why do we care about the psychology? What's it actually for? So I'm going to give you a quick model. We're going to talk about what we're actually here to do, because we're not here to make a checklist. This is a gamer. So when we start out as designers, right, when we first get started when building games, we go through these three different phases, I think. We often start out here, right, where we're like, hey, gamers, they're so weird, right? Ha ha, they have this weird behavior, da-da-da. And then we get jobs, right? We get jobs, and we figure out that actually we have to develop empathy for our players. It's a requirement. It's actually an obligation for a game designer to do this, but it's really, really hard. Where do our models come from? How does gamers' brains work? How does humans' brains work? We don't really know. Over time, we develop, and we develop, and we develop, and we gradually get better, and we become Amy Hennig. And we learn to be able to think the way that our gamers think. All right? This is the goal. The goal of this talk is not to give you a checklist for you to go back and improve all of your game designs. The goal of this talk is to help you develop what I call accurate empathy, to understand accurately what's going on inside your players' minds so that you can make predictions, right? How about that? So that's why we're here. We're going to develop accurate empathy. I believe it is our professional obligation, in fact. So that was 2011. So what do we do? A quick summary of the talk. There's this thing called the Big Five. Who is familiar with the Big Five? Yes, a lot of you. Big Five is cool. I will do this fast. Big Five is a personality model that says that there are 5 different clusters of personality: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. What I liked about this model, the reason I was excited about it when I first stumbled across it, was that it had positive and negative sides and a sort of a standard distribution of population across it. So you could be open to experience or closed to experience. You could be a conscientious person or an unconscientious person, etc. This looked very, very useful to me. Of course, there's a lot of this going on now, but I was pretty excited about it at the time. So we built a model and talked about our different, the archetypes, what these different people could be, as a tool. So this is a tool for you to learn about the way that people vary from each other. And of course, what I did is to translate those things into game design. But I'm going to break down a little bit what was inside of these things. Openness to experience is an example. There's a bunch of these, but openness to experience has inside it 6 facets, okay? Because openness is a big topic. There's 6 facets. One is imagination. I'll talk to you about it in a minute. There's 6 of them: artistic interest, emotionality, blah, 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 blah. Those are all good. What's a facet? Oh, sorry. So what did I do? I gave people the test. I just gave them the test, and then I sat down and I asked them what their gaming preferences was. I did that for about 50, 60 people, right? It was a lot of fun. Over the course of several years, I did a bunch of research, right? Turns out that's called qualitative research in science. I had no idea that that's what it was, but turns out that's how you start in developing a theory. So, good stuff. What I was attempting to do is I was attempting to correlate, as an example, imagination with game design, game element preferences. So what is imagination, as an example? If you have a high score in imagination, if you were to take the Big Five test, if you had a high score, it means that your inner world is more interesting to you than the outer world, right? And if you have a low score, it's the other way around. The outer world is more interesting than the inner world, right? And what I was trying to do is I was trying to say, hey, this correlates. If you have a high score in imagination, you tend to prefer fantasy. And if you have a low score, you tend to prefer realism. It's fairly obvious, but it turns out to also be kind of true, right? So we took that model, took the 5 domains, and we broke it into the 5 domains of play. So openness to experience, people with high scores like novelty. Conscientiousness is all about challenge. Extroversion is about stimulation. Agreeableness is about harmony. These are game elements that you can identify in your game design as a tool. Cool. Neuroticism, it was weird. It correlated. I ended up calling the feature threat, but it didn't really correlate with anything, so we're just going to say goodbye to that one later. If you want to know what happened there, you can go back. I talked about that one in my second talk, so talk about that later. So this was in 2011. So that was cool. We have these 24 facets to measure human preference, right? And we're ready to go and make some great games. Cool. 2013. So 24 facets is way too fucking much. It's way too many. It's not usable in any form. So we really need to fix our model. So in the second talk, we broke down these 4 categories into just 2 primary facets that talked specifically about the most important things that people care about, the primary facets for gaming preferences. And these are them. We're going to go into more detail about them later in the talk, so I'm not going to dwell on them now. But this is the little box that I have for my symbol. So we reduced 24 down to 8 and made the statement that these 8 preferences seem to dominate player decision-making in terms of what they think, why people buy games and what they're really looking for when they play, what their main taste is about. So that's really the big deal. So that was cool. That went pretty well. So the summary of that one was, here's a little model to help you develop accurate empathy for your players, right? With all these different, and sort of a super complicated type system. Great. So here we are. That was it. That was 2 talks, and I did pretty good. 7 minutes. Not bad. All right, good. So, bang, now we're up to the present. 2016. Here we are. So, I built this model. I have been making a video game. In the meantime, we have been working on various things. We're doing stuff, trying to apply it, right? So, hey, did it work? This is the question I'm here to talk about. Does it work? Is this model actually useful in development? Did it help us in any way? There's 2 answers to this. Did the model make communication easier? Absolutely yes. And this is the primary value that this model has. I'm going to talk about why and how you can use it. Did it prove to be a perfect, complete match of player motivation? Did it cover all of our bases? No, not even kidding. Not even close. So, we need to fix this model in some ways. I'm going to share with you the patch. So this is the Domains of Play 2.0. So, engines of play. First problem. Designers think in groups. So, this model, I can give you the big 5 tests. You can go and take it. You'll get a little printout. It'll tell you all about your personality, right? That's cool. Very, very useful information. And it can help me talk to you about what kind of game you will like, right? That's cool. And we can discuss that. But that's not how designers think, right? We don't think in terms of single individual people who we're designing for. We tend to think in groups, right? We're looking for achievement players and action players, and we need a model that helps us clarify group behavior in addition to one-on-one stuff, right? So that was a big problem. So I'm going to introduce you to something called taste maps, which is it's the tool I developed to solve this problem. Second problem is that motivation changes over time. This turns out to be a really big deal. You don't keep playing for the same reasons that you start playing, okay? It changes after taste isn't satisfied. The first 30 minutes or so, you sit down at your console or at your PC or wherever you're gaming, and you say, I want to play this tonight. You start playing that. About 30 minutes later, maybe, your taste has been satisfied. You're good. That was fantasy action, cool. But now 3 hours later, you're still playing. It's not for the same reason. So, we have a model for that, right? The 4-domain model is static, right? The 4-domains model just talks about your taste, right? To give you an idea of how absurd that is, the 4 domains it talks about excitement, right? We have this thing called thrill. If you have a high score in thrill, then you're going to be all about explosions. So if I like explosions, yay! So currently, then if I was going to keep you playing for a really, really long time, I would just keep adding explosions to the game. And when I patch it, right, I would just add more explosions and just keep going like that, right? You should be perfectly happy. Why aren't you happy? Why, boom, more boom, right? It doesn't work that way, okay? And yet, people play these games for a long, long time. When you've got 1,000 hours in Team Fortress 2, you're not playing for the boom, okay? It's not the same thing. So we're going to talk about what that means, how we're going to do that. So we're going to do 2 big patches to the system. This is going to be a third model we're going to add along the way. So, taste maps. Let's talk about taste maps. Thinking in groups. Remember, designers think in groups. All right, so we have our 4 domains here. We have our little chart. We could take a score, and you would have a score in each of those quadrants, and would tell us your taste. But what we can do here is we can take advantage of the fact that with these spectrums, with these facets, that the population distributes itself. It tends to distribute itself. I'm not making the claim, just for the camera and for the record, I'm not making the claim that all of the big 5 facets distribute them perfectly along a standard distribution. That's not really true. But humans tend to group into a distribution for these facets. Okay? So we can take advantage of that. And even if this isn't 100% statistically accurate, the way of thinking is accurate. Okay? So we can take advantage of this because we know with a standard distribution that we've got standard deviations, right? We've got these nice dividing lines where we know we have roughly 60% of the people in the middle, and then on the side we have our 15s, and out here in the wings we have 5%, right? And again, I'm just drawing general lines, so we can take that. So that's a fact. Let's use that. So we're going to apply that idea to our grid here. Now remember, we have 2 spectrums. We have fantasy and realism, and we have building and exploration on the side. So we're going to put on our grid. That's your fantasy to realism standard distribution grid. And then we're going to do another one. We're going to go, hey, there's our other grid. Cool. Now, what we've got is we have a map. We know, well, we postulate, anyway, that 60% of the players are going to be there in the middle. And then we've got this ring of 15% players around the outside. And then we've got that 5% ring on the furthest end. So this gives us an idea of where the population lies, right? This is a very rough prediction that we're working with here, but for an early concept of design when you're doing pre-production, it's good enough. This looks like, if I was to stop here, this looks like a recommendation that you just designed for the middle, right? I hope half of you are like, oh, wait a minute. He's from Ubisoft. I knew it. They really are like that. We're not, actually, but, so no, right? You would think that it would be aim for the middle. But there's another aspect to this that I've discovered in my qualitative discussions, and I've continued to see in my work, because it turns out there's this other thing that I've called investment layers. Investment layers is the idea that the further out I am from the middle, like my score, the furthest out my score is, the more of a shit I give, basically, right? That's kind of the idea. If I'm a middle score, if you ask me fantasy or realism, and I'm like, yeah, I'll kind of take both. Then I say, are you going to buy the game based on that? I'll be like, meh. What else have you got, right? I want to know what the other things are, right? But if I'm scoring in the 15%, if I've got like an 80 or something like that in fantasy, right? And I say, you're going to buy this game, it's a fantasy game, you're going to buy it? I'd be like, yeah. It's not a fantasy. Well, I don't know. Maybe. How cool is it? And if I'm in the 5%, if I'm out there in that 95 percentile, and I really think that fantasy is the thing, if you're going to tell me, if you say this game is kind of realistic, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to waste my time on that, right? No, thank you. So, even though the population distribution goes that way, the investment distribution is inverted. Okay? It's totally backwards, right? So, what does that give us when we add it to our little chart? We have our meh in the middle there. We have our care, and we have our care lots. So we end up with zones of caring, is what we end up with. In the middle, we have low investment, high population people, right? For this particular group of taste, this taste group, right? For fantasy and realism. Low investment, but a lot of people. They don't care very much about that feature, but there's a lot of them. And then out on the edge, you've got a high investment, low population, right? The people on the high end, people out on the ring, are going to be your passionate advocates. They're the ones who are going to talk about your game. They're the ones that are going to convert. They're the ones who are going to sing your praises if you do it well, because they have a really strong opinion about this one thing. And if you do it well, they're going to get really excited about it, because it doesn't get done that well very often, right? You're going to have really strong opinions. But there's not that many of them, right? You also need to be thinking about how to balance that experience so that you also capture enough of the middle that your budgets are going to work out, right? That your studio doesn't fold, and you have enough success that it works out, right? And maybe you don't want that low investment population. It's perfectly reasonable. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so these are taste maps. These zones apply across all 4 of the domains. Right? So there are these populations and these distributions. This is a map for you to build a taste map for your own game. That's not the map, actually. This is the map. This is the homework. Somebody said, is there going to be homework? Will there be a test? Yes. Take this for your game. Go home and fill it out. Don't send it to me. I won't grade it. It's not. Anyway, so this is the test, right? And really, you can just fill in the big boxes. You don't have to get into super detail. Really, what you should be asking yourself is, how much do I want? What kind of investment and what kind of population am I shooting for, right, with this game? What do I expect my players to do? Now, that's really abstract, so I'm going to break this down. We're going to do a couple of examples so that it gives you a little bit more clarity on what I'm fucking talking about here. We're going to start with an indie game that I think that some of you have heard of. That has been fairly successful. It's got an incredibly diverse set of opportunities in it. Minecraft is amazing as this. If you've not played Minecraft, no, seriously though. Is there anybody in this room who hasn't played Minecraft? Go fucking play Minecraft. Okay. 45 million players. Go play Minecraft. Who here has kids? Who here has kids who aren't playing Minecraft? You're all playing Minecraft, right? I tell people, there is a generation of game designers right now who are growing up playing this game, and when they reach their 20s, they're going to enter our industry, and they're going to start out with the basic assumption that every game should have complete random world generation, full creativity mode, right? Total expandable customization, right? Be completely shareable, be moddable, right? So it just is a baseline assumption. I mean, that's just, of course. Get ready. Because I'll be retired by then. I'll be done. This is your problem. Good luck with that. So Minecraft is an exploration game where you can dig through stuff, you can rebuild temples, you can make, my house. You can collect all the Pokemon if you want to. You can rebuild Westeros. Or you can go into survival mode and creepers. So Minecraft is cool. We're going to build a taste map for Minecraft. Now, Minecraft has been a wildly successful game. Our results should reflect the success of Minecraft, right? It should point us towards a reason, right? Or some kind of it should at least support the success of that. So let's talk about it. So I'm going to add these in here one at a time. I'm going to start in the middle with the 60%, right? The low investment, high population group, because Minecraft has in it, right? Exploration, yes, and building, it does. When you're filling in the boxes in the middle, the question to ask yourself is, does it have this feature? Does your game have this feature at all, right? So it has exploring, yes. It has building, yes. It has fantasy, sure, it's a fantasy place. It has realism. It has like trees that make wood, and some of the intuition, some of the stuff is kind of based on the real world, right? It has skill in it, yes. You could also argue that it is pretty easy to play because you can turn it off and go into creative mode, right? There's also no skill. Work, not work, etc. So, in general, we can say that Minecraft has all these things. Now let's move out to the next range. Remember, this is where it gets a little bit more intense. So we're going to expand out the zones. The next zone, the 50% zone, the question to ask yourself here when you're filling out these squares is this part of the game good? Right? Do you intend, when you're making your game, to make this part of the game good enough that people will like your game for that feature, right? You're going to hang your hat and say, this matters, right? So for Minecraft, we can say the fantasy is pretty amazing, right? Those worlds that it creates are incredible. When you go down in the thing, and then they've got the nether, spoilers, there's nether and nether dragon and stuff, all right? There's plenty of fantasy in there, and it's good stuff. It's not a story much, but, it's got cool fantasy. The realism part is also pretty cool. You can construct anything you want, right? And there's some really into the water, the way that the water flows, and fire, and there's, some cool stuff. Exploration, yeah, right, amazing. And building is, of course, incredible. Work, not work. I'm going to talk a little bit about work, not work. This is grinding. Work is the feature of a game where you do the same thing over and over for some sort of a task down the road, right? And players who like work enjoy that. I am a work player myself. I like myself a good grind. Yeah? So yeah, Minecraft has grinding in it. Of course it does. It also has non-grinding. The simplest design decision they made, the one that opened up their possibilities amazing, is the difference between creative and survival mode. If you're not familiar with this, you can just type in play mode 1, and suddenly you have all of the stuff that you want forever, right? Can't die, can do whatever you want to. You don't have to work at all to play that game. Skill, no skill. Again, there is a huge amount of skill in Minecraft, right? You really can go far with that. Lots to learn, lots to explore in terms of understanding the way the system works. But if you don't want to get good at Minecraft, you don't have to. You can just fly around and, this is why kids love to play it. Because you don't have to be good at it to enjoy it. Let's talk about the challenge part, the simulation stuff. So multiplayer versus solo. Of course it has multiplayer. You can play with your friends, and it's pretty damn good. You can do all kinds of stuff together. The cooperation stuff all works really well. And if you want to, you can also turn it off, play a survival game, very strong solo experience, super cool. You can have a great time. Thrill versus calm. Is Minecraft thrilling? It can be. There's moments, right? When you're digging along, and then it's suddenly, and that's lava. That's a thrilling moment, right? Or when you're moving through the thing and you hear the creeper. It has it, right? You can also turn it off. Again, switch into creative mode. They don't even see you, right? The monsters can't hurt you. There's nothing there. So it's cool. So yes, it's good. All of those features are good. And lastly, for Harmony, does Minecraft have a story? So context versus mechanics. Context is there's a reason for what I'm doing, right? There's meaning in what I'm playing, right? And mechanics is it's got cool interactions and it's cool systems, right? So does Minecraft have a story? Nah, not really, right? But it does have survival mode. And survival mode generates player stories, right? I got lots of great stories about my best Minecraft moments, right? And that counts. That counts. At this level, that counts. And of course, mechanically, Minecraft is amazing. And then co-op versus combat. Can you fight in Minecraft? You can. There's combat in Minecraft, right? And co-op, there absolutely is. But the combat isn't super strong. Of course, there was a cool patch that got released recently. It makes it much better. Okay, so that's our 15% layers. Those are our 15% layers. Also, I'm sure you all noticed, a very, slick way to kind of describe what these all do, right? Because you're sort of a primer on what all of these are. All right, so now let's go out to the 5%, those super edges around the outside. The fantasy and the realism for Minecraft are just not a part of the core of the thing. It's not the best in the world. To fill out those 5% rings on the outside, the question you got to ask yourself is this experience among the best in the world? The middle, does it exist? Do I have this feature? The central one is it good? Will it be good? And the last one is it among the best in the world? And if you're going to sit down with your game and you're going to fill in that 5% box, you're making a commitment to yourself that you're going to make that part of your game among the best in the world, which is great. I think it's safe to say that Minecraft can be rated among the best in the world for building and exploration. I don't think that's a stretch. I don't think I have to defend that statement. In fact, I can say that's the standard that all other games are now held to, I think, in terms of exploration and building. Absolutely. But in terms of fantasy and realism, obviously not. Challenge. Bam! There is an endless amount of skill in Minecraft, as we see with the artistic creation and the long-term survival stuff, all the depths that you can play, right? But you also can just turn it right the fuck off and do nothing with any of that you want. An amazing achievement to be both one of the highest skill games out there and one of the lowest skill games out there. That's amazing, right? And in terms of work and not work, same thing. This is the creative mode versus survival mode decision. It offers them an opportunity where you've got best-in-class work grinding. Not only can you grind forever in your world, if you ever get tired of that, you can just start a new one. Regenerate a whole new thing and keep going. You can't finish it, right? Bam! Best in class for 4 different edges of that zone. Pretty impressive. Multiplayer. Minecraft has generated vast multiplayer communities. They support your own server structures, right? There are, I don't know if you've gone out there and you've played on these, but there are entire MMOs scripted in Minecraft. Okay? Yes, it's amazing what they're doing. You can play Counter-Strike in Minecraft. I've done it. Pretty fun. Or you can turn all that off and play on your own, right? And then, of course, calm, we can say that the game is just completely serene, right? It's a canvas in many ways. But in terms of thrill, we draw the line there. Okay. And then over here in Harmony, again, context, there's barely enough story for us to put the context there. Remember, that was just player story. Certainly not enough for it to be best in class. But for cooperation, yes. For cooperation, the game it's building together and exploring together. It's an incredible experience. And the mechanics are among some of the best in the world. But of course, the combat is just kind of meh. Right? It's okay. It exists. And it's gotten much better. As I said, the new patch has great stuff. So I would say that is a pretty good example of the taste map for Minecraft. Right? And hopefully that gives you an idea of what these mean, and so that you can begin to think about it for your own game. Remember, I'm trying to give you a tool to go back and do it yourself. It's a good example, though. Let's do another one. Let's take a game that isn't quite that vast. Has anyone played this game? Stanley Parable? Yeah! Right on. Someday, you guys have great taste. So if you haven't played the Stanley Parable is a first-person adventure, basically. It's a PC game that you play an office worker who basically wakes up in an empty office, and a disembodied narrator starts to describe the things that you do. Right? And eventually you come to this room, and there are these two doors, and the narrator says, and Stanley walked through the door on the left, and you get to decide whether or not you're going to do as he told you to. And the whole game is about exploring the consequences of that choice, and you play it over and over and over, and it's fucking mad, it's crazy, I love it, it's great. It's a fantastic game. If you haven't played it, check it out. Very successful. Very successful. Did very, very well, which is why I've picked it here, because it was a successful game, but its taste map looks a little bit different than the Minecraft one. So let's build it out. First, do these features exist, right? You don't build anything in the Stanley Parable. It doesn't exist. That feature does not exist, right? Literally do not. You do have work, no work. You do have some skill, a little bit of skill, a little bit less play. There's no multiplayer. It's solo only. Cooperation. I marked cooperation as that. That's wrong. That should not be that way. So we shouldn't also have any cooperation. It should just be conflict. And then mechanics versus context. Okay. So that's an example of a game that sort of slices that. Let's add a couple of other zones here, right? For the 15 and the 5%, I would say that the Stanley Parable is this. You can grind, you kind of have to grind over and over to get Stanley Parable, right? To keep going, to get to any good ending, you have to play it a couple of times. There's not much skill in the game, though. It's really about finding stuff, which is a skill, right? Knowing the map of the space is a skill, but we weren't going to go any farther than that, right? It's a deeply solo experience, right? Not only is it solo, there's no people. It's incredibly isolating, right? It's really, you're locked in a box. That's the deal. And the context, the whole point is the context. The whole point of the thing is a story, right? That's really what you're doing. So I would say that that's the taste map for the Stanley Parable. It's a very successful game, however, right? Had great aesthetics, great execution. So it's an example that I'm trying to communicate to you that even though the Stanley Parable did not have nearly as broad of a target, right, in terms of mechanics that it has in its game that are there to satisfy a wide variety of gamers, because the game was made on a modest budget and was released well, it did really, really well for them, right? So again, it's not about filling up all the boxes. It's about matching your boxes to your budgets. Okay. And this, so now go do this. Fill in your thing, right? Right. So how do you make your own, right? So there's really no better answer to that question, right? How do I make it? Than you just sit down with your team and talk it out. You just need to talk it out, right? And you need to be honest with yourself, right? If I've done my job in communicating to you how it works, you should be able to do it, right? If you do this, be honest. Accept that it's a commitment. If you fill in one of those 5% edge cases, man, be ready to explain it to yourself. Be ready to justify it. Because if you just go, oh yeah, it's going to be super great. We're going to have all of the people and it's going to be really, really great. And it's useless. You're wasting your time, right? It's a process about focus. Okay. So those are taste maps. A tool for you to communicate about your audience. So, what's it good for? I hope Dan never watches these talks, actually. I use this example every time, and he's actually a very scary person. I'm sure he wouldn't hurt me. What is it good for? It's good for communication, right? These taste maps help you talk to everyone involved with your production about the game you are making, okay? From conception, from the beginning, from the original conceiver all the way through to the final audience, it lets you talk about the game that you're making. Marketing in particular will love this shit, okay? They really will love it. And this really surprised me, because I thought this was super geeky, right? I was like, oh, we're down in the game design world, and da-da-da. And I would share it with my design team, and we're doing these maps, and it took a while for people to figure it out. They're like, oh, okay, I guess so. And then once we got the language, it was cool, right? But some effort. And I bring it over to the marketing guys, right? And they're like, oh, charts and graphs. Yeah, we speak charts and graphs. Yeah. This looks like a target demographic, right? I'm like, well, yeah, kind of, I guess. Is that cool? They're like, yes! Are you telling me that this is the game you're making? Yes, that's what I'm going to do. Great! So they walk off. They're all excited. Okay? Super enthusiastic, right? They're like, wait, is there science behind this? Oh yes, lots of science. Big five, lots of science. Cool! They're so enthusiastic. So honestly, it's a better sell for marketing than the dev. The dev team took convincing. So that's the first engine of play. Taste. Taste. Preference maps help you understand what kinds of players' taste your game will satisfy. It's just a way for you to predict and to communicate who you are and are not making this game for. One interesting side effect is that dev team members who have scores that are outside of your target zones, right, will also now have a reason to understand why they don't like the game, which has been an interesting side effect. Very, very useful stuff, right? Because instead of going, well, we should make a game that's more like this, right? They go, oh yeah, this isn't for me. And they don't feel bad about it. So it's cool. So that was the first problem. Groups. Second problem, if you remember way back in the beginning, was that player taste changes over time. Player experience changes over time. And this model, remember, explosion, explosion, explosions, this doesn't capture it. So what are we going to do about this? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce to you a very, very quick model of time, because we need it. We're going to talk about time, so we need a model of time. Fortunately, time is well understood and easy to model. I found a good one. It was in some presentation that someone gave me in some training thing. I don't remember. It was great. I thought it was good. Yes, I'll use this. So here's time. Here's the model. This is called the player's journey. It's 4 phases. In the discovery phase, the player would say, if you said, have you heard of Dark Souls? Right? Or did you play Dark Souls? The player would, this person would say, yeah, I've heard of it. This is the discovery phase, where they're first encountering your game. In the evaluation phase, if you say, what do you think about Dark Souls? They would say, oh yeah, I tried it. I downloaded the demo, I played the first couple of hours, or I tried it. Yeah, sorry, I tried it. Then we slowly over time, we would evolve into the use phase, where if you said, hey, what do you think about Dark Souls? Oh, I played it. I played that game, right? I accomplished my thing. I interacted with it satisfactorily, and then I walked away, right? And then lastly, there's this phase called affinity, right? Where if you say, do you play Dark Souls? Oh, yeah, I play Dark Souls. Oh, yeah. I am a Dark Souls player. This is where your identity becomes mingled with the game, right? This is true of all products, right? And this is, of course, where we want people to go. Right? If we've done this, we've given them a game that has affected their lives and has changed their belief about who they are. Yay! Right? Like, victory! That's great, right? We all want that from our games, right? We all love to be that kind of player. So that's the model. It's pretty simple. So, I'm going to give you a general rule here, right? Over time, as time goes on, the impact of taste satisfaction is going to go down. Okay? The longer you play a game, the less you care about how well it matches your individual tastes, right? But what's going on the other end here, right? What's the thing? What's this? What we need for this slot, because this is a big deal, we really want to get there, right? What we need is some kind of massive psychological theory, right? Something really meaty, something that's got like 30 or 40 years of research, right? The theory that talks about long-term satisfaction, right? And something that's so well established that it's got a bunch of other theories on top of it, right? A theory, say, that has been mentioned no less than 15 times in talks at GDC this year, okay? That theory, of course, is self-determination theory, SDT. Who here has some kind of a medium working knowledge of SDT? You guys familiar with it? Yes? Good, 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 good. The number of people, the number of hands that go up goes up every year, and that's good, okay? SDT is a really big deal. It's been around since the 70s, and if you have seen this TED Talk, The Puzzle of Motivation by Dan Pink, or if you've read his book, that's SDT. If you're familiar of the concept of the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, if that makes sense to you, that's SDT, okay? And nobody knows that that's SDT because it's become so embedded in our culture, right? It's just there, right? What it means, of course, is that if intrinsic motivation comes from within, extrinsic motivation is I pay you, right, to do it, basically. All right. So those ideas didn't exist in our culture prior to the 1970s. Now they're fully embedded. I'm going to do a quick primer on what SDT is, though, because it's a really big deal. There are 3 SDT posits SCT posits that there are 3 satisfactions that are universal to human beings. Every human being has them. If you don't have these 3 motivation satisfactions, you are not a human being. This is a test. We get to find out who among us is a human. So pay attention, class. The first one is competence. Second one is autonomy. The third is relatedness. Competence is the universal want to control outcomes and experience mastery. There is no such thing as a human being who does not want to get better at their life. Everybody wants to get better at what they do because that's, well, of course we want that. Why wouldn't we? And it's true. Everybody wants that. Mastery is easy. The other 2 are a little bit weirder. So that's competence. Autonomy is the universal urge to be causal agents of one's own and act in harmony with it's choice. Okay, it's choice. It's choices that we make. Now, an important and often confusing point here, autonomy is not satisfied by the act of choosing. Okay? And the example that I always give is your desk at work, or your desk at home, or any desk that you have. Who here has a desk? Great. Perfect. And if you don't, then it's your bag or whatever. So, your desk. You have decorated your desk. Yeah? The act of decorating your desk is not autonomy. That's just fun. Right? You just make choices and deliver it. Autonomy is when you return to your desk the next day and you see the things on your desk and you say, I exist. I was here, and I would make those choices again. This turns out to be important to human beings, okay? It's a big deal, right? You want to see the consequences of the choices you have made in the world. So when we say that, customizing your character satisfies autonomy, we don't mean that going through the menu and assigning the thing and doing the dress-up thing, that satisfies autonomy. It doesn't. That's an activity that is fun. What satisfies autonomy is coming back to your character screen after having not played the game for a month or something like that, seeing that character and going, oh yeah, that's a cool character. Yeah. Okay? That's autonomy. All right. The last one is relatedness. Universal want to interact, to be connected to, and to experience caring for others. This is about rank, relation, right? This is often confused as the social one, okay? Relatedness is not satisfied through social interaction, okay? Relatedness is the knowledge of where I fit. What nation am I part of? Who's my family? Who are my friends? How good am I? Am I better or worse at this game than you? Am I, right? What do I, right? These relative rankings are relatedness, okay? You can be a hermit and have a very, very high relatedness satisfaction because you know exactly where you fit in the world. You fit in, fuck you, I don't want to see you people ever again. Right? I'm living on this beach where none of you can talk to me again, right? Perfectly happy, right? Okay. So what would be great would be if there had been someone who, for the last, say, 10 or 15 years, had been doing the work that I did with the Big Five to translate SDT into gaming motivation. Would that be cool, right? That would be really neat. Is Scott Rigby in the room? No? Thank God. Okay. His name is Scott Rigby and Richard Ryan. They have been doing this work for a long time. They have a company called Immersive, and they published a paper in 2006 called The Motivational Pull of Video Games that demonstrated how important SDT is and how and the relationships between the Big Five and SDT that I'm talking to you about today. I'll go back to that one. You should hire these guys. Just if you have a company, if you do this stuff, and you want to know about this stuff, these guys know what they're doing. On the bright side, it also meant that I didn't have to do any work here. This was great. I was like, slam this one right in, and we're done. So, their model is called PENS, which stands for the Player Experience of Need Satisfaction. It's very good. And it basically goes like this. Competence translates into the concept of your game being easy to learn, difficult to master, right? Autonomy translates into choice, customization, and agency, and relatedness translates into social grouping, status feedback systems. These are the basic stuff that connects with this. I'm not going to go into any more detail on this because there are like 10 GDC talks in the vault of Scott and Richard giving stuff about this, and so go and do the research if you're interested. You really should, because I'm going to say this very clearly for the camera and everybody, so we're also real super clear about this. SDT is the most important psychological model in existence today. Go learn about it. It's the big one. It's the one that really matters, right? If you only learn one thing, go study SDT. And I'm the big 5 guy. Okay? So, go learn about that one. How do we use this? We need to make a map. This one's really, really easy. All we do is we say, for these 3, what are the takeaways? What takeaways are we going to have? And the question we ask ourselves here is, when the player puts down the controller and they stop playing your game, what will they have? What will they walk away with? Let me show you what I mean. Let's talk about this indie game that we were talking about before, Minecraft. So, competence is skill, remember? It's the ability to get good at stuff. When I set down the controller, and I've been playing Minecraft, I'm still good at survival. I still have my rhythm, the way that I do stuff. It's something that I have that you can't take away. Turning off the machine doesn't make me worse at it, right? In addition, I have the same thing for crafting. My skill in crafting is my own possession. It's something the game gives me. It's competentions. Right? It's coin that I get, right? And I can go into Minecraft and I can constantly mine these little coins of skill, right? And I love that because I'm a human being. By the way, were there any non-human beings in the room? Is there anyone who doesn't have any of 3 of the... All right. Look at your neighbor next to you. All right. Autonomy, remember, is the choices that I make and seeing them reflected. When I build the world, I go in there and I dig my mines, and when I play Minecraft, I go straight down to the bottom of the earth and I dig out this way, and then I'm a dwarf, I don't know. But that's always there. I turn the machine off, it's still there. I still have the world. The game doesn't take it away from me. I can accidentally destroy it and then I feel bad, but I still have my memories about the world I've created. You can't take those away from me. I did that. Right? I made that happen. Or I built Westeros, right? I made a gigantic Pokemon floating in the sky, right? And I will always have built that. I may lose the evidence of that, but I will always have done that. And I set the controller down. That matters to me. I walk away feeling richer for having accomplished that thing. This is what matters to people when you ask the question, is your time on this planet being well spent? That was the nature of the survey that they used to discover the SDT structure. They interviewed people who were working in working conditions and tested various types of their different office spaces and working conditions. And the question was, is your life being well used? And if they said yes, they tended to have these things, just because they were experiencing competence, autonomy, and relatedness. In Minecraft, also, if I set down the controller, I have had a shared experience with you. We have played together. And I set down the controller, it doesn't go away, right? Also, these canvases are public, right? I can share it. When I share my Minecraft creation, that act of sharing can't be revoked. I just made an impact in the world. I made a statement about who I was, people evaluated that, and suddenly I have a bunch of relatedness coin, right? And again, I'm walking away richer for the experience. All right, well, that's Minecraft. Let's talk about the Stanley Parable. Because at first glance, this game lasts about 6 hours. It's not really about long-term satisfaction, this game, right? It's kind of consumable, right? It doesn't really seem to have much of this stuff in it. It's really not doing a great job at satisfying this. But I would argue that when you play Stanley Parable, it's a maze. And I solve it, or a labyrinth, maybe maze. It's a labyrinth that has different, anyway, it's complicated. But I solve it. I get good enough to solve that maze, and that is a skill. And when I tell people I played it, I always brag. I go, I have all of the endings, right? I got all of the endings. I just said that to hundreds of people, and then the thing here. Competence. Actually, and that's relatedness, right? So I'm not bragging about it. So I solved the maze. Autonomy, the game is about choice. What choice did you make, right? It matters. You remember what choices you made and the way that you went about that, and that teaches you something about who you are. You've made those choices and you go back, right? It matters. This is why we're interested in interactive entertainment in the first place, is it tells us who we are. And once you've made that choice, it doesn't matter. And lastly, relatedness. That guy, that voice, Stanley turned to the left, right? I miss him. You know? I really do. I'd play the sequel. You know? I'd do it. I'd go back, be tormented by that bastard again. I would. So these are takeaways. These are things that I haven't played the Stanley Parable in years, right? But I still have all these. So that's what STT is giving us. This is what people want. These are the takeaways for the Stanley Parable. Okay. So your job is to go into your game and fill these in. Again, when player puts down the controller, what are they going to take away? And will that be cool? Right? This is hard to do. You have to prioritize. And I've only given you 2 boxes for a reason. Right? Prioritize. Don't make a long list. Right? In some cases, that can be useful, but be frugal. So that's the second engine to play, satisfaction. So a satisfaction map is a great way to communicate what you intend your core value to be in the game. What are the things that the players are going to walk away with? Right? That's what that's about. Okay. That's a good one. So, where was I? Okay. Right. Accurate empathy. Make great games, right? We're building this up, right? We have designers think in groups. Model is about individuals, but we have these taste maps that tell us about different people. We have this thing, and then Scott Rigby solved all of my problems for me. Thank you, Scott. He's very, very cool. And then we did these maps here, and it's okay. All right, so now we're up here. So we're going to take all of this together, right? And it is time, ladies and gentlemen, to form player psychology Voltron. We just put them on the same map. It's just that. Sorry. Got a little excited there. So players in their early part of the journey with your game, they'll be driven by their personality profile. When they first make contact with your game, they are driven by your personality profile. Thank you. And this is where genre and their personal interest comes into play. As they move deeper, satisfaction theory takes over, and the things that they are walking away with become more and more important. And if your player isn't taking away things from satisfaction theory every time they play, they're going to stop. Right? So this is the model, the current model of engines of play. That's the slide, right? And it's got embedded systems in it. It's a model of models. Okay, we're proposing a model of models. So benefits. How is this useful? How has this? Because I've been using this, right? I've been using this approach, right? Now I haven't been using this on the game that I'm making. I've been using this on the designers who have the misfortune to work for me. Right? Because this model is not about making better game design. This model is about making better game designers. Okay? And those game designers then will internalize these models and then make better decisions because they will understand their players better. So this helps you. There are a couple of things that this can help you directly with, though. First is playtest interpretation. We're starting to do this now on a regular basis. A lot of companies are doing this where when we bring people in for playtests, we give them a personality test as well, so that we have an idea if we should listen, or how much we should listen to their feedback. If they didn't like it, and they're not supposed to, right? Because we didn't make the game for them, good, right? That's okay, right? So it can help you with playtest interpretation. Collaboration is really the big one, though. Using these models has made communicating what game we're making way easier, right? And it's helped me at least maintain a coherent vision from start to finish. Game design testing, taste maps, and satisfaction theory is a way for you to actually evaluate if a paper design fits your game before it gets into the game. which is very rare. There are not very many techniques that can successfully let you evaluate a paper design in any way prior to prototyping, right? In general, you shouldn't do that. In general, you should be prototyping first, right, and building the actual game. But if you do need to do that, if you do need to do paper designs, it's a tool to help you see if it's the stuff you want to do. And then expectation setting. I talked about marketing, right? It is a way for you to tell people years in advance how your game is going to feel and who's going to be interested in it, right? Most importantly, however, and here is my secret agenda for you, it will make you a better person. I mean designer. Wow, that slipped right out. Because empathy for normal people, right, for other people, empathy is optional. I wish that wasn't true, but it is, right? If you're a game developer making game design decisions, empathy is obligatory. You are required to develop empathy. Because if you don't, your team will fail. And your players are going to have a bad experience, right? So these kinds of models, not just my model, but everyone, these kinds of models help you develop accurate empathy. They make you into a better designer, and they make you into a better person. And I think that that's the whole point of all of these talks. In conclusion, to summarize the whole goddamn thing, we start to play games for different reasons, then we continue. We are guided by individual tastes when choosing what to begin, and we are guided by universal satisfactions when choosing what to continue. Okay? That is my conclusion so far right now. The slides will be up on the website, of course, at the end. What's missing? Last words on this. There are a couple engines missing from this map. This is not a complete map yet. I would like it to be, but it's not. First and foremost among those is emotion. The actual experience of this is missing from this engine. Fortunately, there's this thing called the 4 fun keys that does a pretty damn good job of describing the nature of the aesthetic experience of emotion. If you're not familiar with Nicole Lazzaro's work, the 4 fun keys, and you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend you check it out. The other thing that I think is missing is a thing called drives. The best example that I have, which we don't really have a good model for, drives, the best example I have to explain what a drive is let's imagine I'm holding a coin in my hand, right? And I flip it, and heads or tails? You all want to know. Y'all want to know. You can't help it. I can do that to you all day. It's heads. It was actually heads, yeah. And you enjoyed that. That's a drive. It's a trick that always works, regardless of where we are in the timeline, right? Any dungeon master knows that if you want your players to have a great fun session, but you haven't really prepared, all you have to do is present a locked door that they can't open. Right? And they will work on that for 17 fucking hours. Right? That's a drive, okay? We don't have a good model for this stuff, okay? So I would like to, but we don't. So maybe we can expand into that. So with those two caveats, and maybe there's a few other things that are missing, those are the two that I know of, this is the engine to play. That's my whole talk. Thank you very much. We're going to do questions and answers, but I really appreciate all your time and attention. Good. We have just a few minutes for questions. I can probably take 2 or 3. So we've got the 2 microphones here. If you want to run up there, try and make it concise and quick if you have questions. If you don't have questions, oh shit, there's a question.
So this question relates to the autonomy aspect.
Yes.
Since every game is interactive and you have control, and you obviously have memories of the controls that you input, is there a possible game that doesn't score well?
Well, it's not. Keep in mind that the fact that all games do that means that players' expectations are set at that baseline, right? And so, when they're making a choice about which game they're going to spend their time on, they're going to spend time on a game that does better than that. Right? Because they all do it, right? We're all, we're doing a lot of stuff competing for our time, right? So, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Easy one. Yes, sir.
Hi. So you presented the 2 engines of play as well as several graphs and, charts.
Charts and graphs.
Yes, indeed.
Smart.
and which were incredibly helpful and informative. And I thought your talk was incredible. So so I'm curious as to how do you compile all this data in order to reach a concrete and succinct conclusion?
Fail faster, follow the fun. I iterate over and over and over. For the way that we use this, I surround myself with smart people and I present the model to them and they tell me why it's dumb. And then I fix it. And then we do that again and again and again and again and again. Because you can't do it yourself, right? So fail faster. Fail faster.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your question.
Okay.
Great question.
The second part of the talk was about what's left on the player when they put away the controller.
Yes.
But that didn't answer the question, how do I design, how do I get the long-term engagement? His taste on the game is changing. How can I prepare my game for that? Like, how do I drive that change to what I want to?
The reason I didn't include any of that is because Scott Rigby has already done an incredible job of filling the internet with that information. There's a bunch of really good articles in Gamma Sutra that he's written about how they work. There's been a bunch of talks here at GDC that are in the vault on that topic. So I didn't feel like I needed to, or that I should spend time on that. He's already done an amazing job of that. So that's really important. Go home and watch that stuff. Yes? Yeah.
Do you think it's important to hit the 5% in one of the zones?
Good question. I think that it is important for you. It's tough to develop a rule of thumb. I have a guess, based on just having modeled a couple of these games, that shooting for a minimum of 2 is important, right? But that's not really scientific. That's just kind of my opinion. And of course, the best answer is as many as possible, right? For the concept that you have. But I think if you only have like one thing that makes people excited about, right? That'll make people excited. You're maybe asking for trouble. That said, Stanley Parable kind of did that, right? It was just a pure solo experience. So I think it's tough to say. I think it's really dangerous to use these tools as checklist predictors or right? I think it's important to use these as a philosophy that you then apply to your real situation and don't expect the model, right, to kind of provide answers for you in a way. You should use it as a tool. So I think it really depends on the context.
Okay,
basically.
thank you.
Thank you. Are we done? I think we're done. Thank you very much.